What path is that?
Hey, Avery Score here with another exciting and informative episode of the Gamer Station. Now, we've had a crazy year here at 2013. 3 huge action titles have already come out. So we started things off with DMC, the new Devil May Cry, coming out of the gate. We moved right into Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and now we've got God of War Ascension on the table. So 3 huge titles, a couple of weird little subtitles in lieu of numbers as well. I think they've gotten tired of numbering game after game after game in the same franchise. It's been quite a crazy year so far, and if you've been waiting to hear this, God of War Ascension is absolutely what you'd expect from a quality franchise like this. It's really a terrific game, from the gameplay to the presentation, even to the storytelling, although more on that a bit. It's a bit weaker than in the previous titles. It's absolutely what you've been waiting for, so go out and get it if that's all you needed to hear. If you need to hear more, well, let me tell you about it. This is not technically a sequel. It's a prequel taking place about 10 years before the event of the original smash hit on the PlayStation 2 in 2005, God of War. So Kratos is trying to break his bonds, if you will, break his chains. Indeed, he does have literal chains, but also figurative chains to the God of War, Ares. The thing is, in ancient Greek society, when you break oaths or otherwise violate societal mores, you can be pursued by these fantastical incarnations of vengeance itself called the Furies. They're really ugly, and they're out to get you. So you're not going to be facing up against gods directly, for example, Ares and Zeus, but rather these creatures called the Furies throughout the game. This will be viewed as by some gamers as perhaps a letdown, considering the epic scope of the previous games when you actually defeat Zeus himself, the king of the gods. I think really what happened is the creators of the game wrote themselves into a corner. I mean, where do you go from there? You defeat the king of the gods. I mean, I guess they could go to the Abrahamic religions and have you go up against Jesus Christ instead of the Olympic pantheon, but that's probably not an option. It's not really situated within the mythos of the God of War game, so there was nowhere to go. They had to go with a prequel. And the story's not bad, it's well told, it's very much in the style and very much in the atmosphere of a God of War title. Kratos is once again a huge badass, an anti-hero, not your typical goody two-shoes, run-of-the-mill game hero. So he's going to allow people to die that he doesn't care about, he's going to cut people up with pretty much no remorse, and just generally be Kratos. That character's been established quite a bit over the previous games, so you won't be disappointed there. The storytelling takes place mostly through actual gameplay, which I believe is one of the greatest strengths of this game. There are too many titles where, you'll see these cutscenes kind of as a reward for finishing a tough boss fight, or just to advance the plot artificially. And to me, this feels like using a medium that really has nothing to do with gaming in the middle of a video game. These game makers really like putting theatrical flourishes on their game, cool camera effects, transitions, and what have you, but this leaves the gamer putting down his controller, sitting back, preparing a snack, and being taken out of that special connection between your on-screen ersatz and your person. Instead, God of War throughout, and has gotten even better at doing this, keeps you engaged in the action. So there's a frenetic pace to the gameplay itself where you're slicing and dicing enemies, doing the game's signature finishing moves, and then it goes into a cutscene, which is really just more gameplay. This is one of the games, along with Shenmue and a few other titles, that popularized quick timer events, essentially sequential button presses that you do in time with the on-screen prompt. So it'll say X, O, etc. This time around, that system has gotten even more in-depth, allowing you to do pretty much freestyle quick timer events. So perhaps there'll be a couple of them that are just your typical press X, press circle, press square, but then you'll go into a freestyle mode where you can just hammer on the enemy, dodge his attacks, and that's used to great effect. This is so much more effective than just going to a typical cutscene because it keeps you in the action, it keeps you firmly situated in the gameplay. The presentation of the God of War series has always been excellent, and God of War Ascension is really no exception. The engine is starting to show its age a little bit, just like the console itself. We've got the PlayStation 4, as you now know, on its way, and the frame rate does let down a little bit. There is some lag, especially when you're surrounded by large numbers of enemies or in the game's more expansive environments. But generally, it keeps pace with the high-speed gameplay, and you won't be too sorely disappointed. It's never unplayable by any means. One of this game's great strengths is its use of environments and how interactive those environments are. So things move in the background. They're definitely just not a fixed backdrop, and you've got to interact with them to solve puzzles and just to advance in the game generally. One thing that the God of War series has always done really well and continues to do excellently is move things around and play with the gamer's perspective and also Kratos' perspective. During some of the game's memorable boss fights, you'll be moved around quite a bit, such as when a huge hand shakes up Kratos like he's in a tiny dollhouse. And every time the camera's perspective moves, that actually has a real effect on gameplay. So again, it's not just a stylistic flourish, something theatrical that's done to impress and amaze, but it actually has an effect on how you play the game. And that's something that's really cool. So in addition to Kratos' great combos and cool moves and very satisfying action gameplay, there's some puzzles that you have to solve in this game in order to advance. That's never been the series' main focus, but it is a strength and it remains pretty good here. One interesting mechanic that was introduced into the game is the ability to decay or heal objects through use of a special item. So essentially you get this item after a memorable level with the Oracle when you're trying to save this Oracle, and you can use it in order to overcome obstacles. For example, there's a bridge that's unattainable. You decay it so that you can move up a level, and then you heal the bridge, quote unquote. How do you heal a bridge? In order to be able to cross it right after. So that's pretty cool. It's very inventive. It feels a little bit, you know, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time inspired, and it ends up being quite cool. So essentially God of War Ascension is more of the same if you're a fan of the series. It really takes if it ain't broke, don't fix it philosophy. It improves on what's always been good about the series, and it cuts out anything that might have been a little boring or less enjoyable. There aren't, you know, a lot of platforming sequences, and the puzzles perhaps have been toned down a little bit, and it really centers on what's always been great about this game, which is chaining together combos of potentially hundreds of moves in a single sequence, dispatching of your enemies, just being a mean dude that enjoys making his enemies bleed, and having quite a bit of fun doing it. So if you've been eagerly anticipating this title, let me tell you, it's not a letdown. You're absolutely not going to be disappointed. Go and pick it up right away. It's perhaps the strongest of those 3 action titles that I mentioned earlier in this episode, so you're going to like it quite a bit. Go and pick it up. I'll see you in the multiplayer mode, which is a crazy addition this time around. 4 different multiplayer modes to choose from, 8 different gods, each with their own abilities. Definitely a departure from what was done previously in the series. Still not the main focus, single player being the meat, but that's going to be an opportunity to measure your skills against mine. I'm Avery Score. This is the Gamer Station.
Oh, exciting stuff. Have you played the game, or maybe you're planning to pick up a copy? Big shout out to Tokyo Kitchen here in Sunway Giza for hosting us here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Until next time.